Previously on Baldcafe.
I'm breaking it, to be honest. I'm scared. It's just the thinness, you know. This is the 3 and you can see, oh, I feel so This is the scary one, right? So this is like fully bold. But... oh no, I don't like it. I'll come back to the camera in a minute, I think. I think the reason I was so shocked is because, like I say, I've watched a lot of videos where it's like the reaction's been really positive, and then my reaction felt really negative, and then mentally I was kind of spiraling into something where I was like, oh no, like I'm that one guy that the bald head doesn't look good for. Do you know what I mean? I'm that one guy where not having hair looks stupid. Initially, when I first took it all off, it was to say it was a shock is probably an understatement. I was really kind of took back by it. I didn't expect to feel the way I felt about it when I did it, and I didn't expect myself to have the reaction that I had when I did it as well. I went out, I got the razor, and as soon as I got it home, I was like, I'm doing it now. You know, and that was never the plan. My plan was to sort of wait for the weekend and ease into it and all the rest of it, but I just went for it and I did it. And the reason that I did that was just because I felt like looking at it would just build anxiety, and maybe I'd talk myself out of it almost, and I'd maybe say, oh, you know, don't do it now, don't do it yet, and you know, maybe other people would see that it's in the house and they'd be like, you know, you don't need to do it. There's so many. The longer you leave things, the more likely you are to put it off. So like I say, when I got it home, I just took it all off, and instantly my reaction wasn't what I expected it to be. Something that I thought would happen is what happens with a lot of these guys, where they get it off and it's like this huge relief and they're instantly super happy. And I feel like my experience was quite a lot of contrast in compared to that, because, you know, my experience was more like I took it off and I hated it. Straight away, I hated it. The thing that I didn't like was my head shape. I was surprised by my head shape. Obviously, I went for the 3 first. You know, I went for the 3 with the clippers first, because I thought maybe I can get away with, you know, being sort of at 3 or 2 or whatever. But when I got down to the 3, I could see the thinness sort of on the top here at the front, especially. I was just like, there's no going back now. You know, the facade and the hair that's covering what was, you know, thinning is gone. So you've got to make a choice now. You either live with even thinner hair or you take it off. And then, you know, I took it off and I went for the 1 all over. Yeah, and obviously my initial shock was, I would say, pretty significant. The house was empty, but I did text my my partner and say, look, I'm going to do it. And she was just like, look, just do it. You're going to look great, all the rest of it. There's so many blokes that look great with a beard and they're bold, and you'll be fine. So I was like, right, okay, yeah. And that sort of was the last thing I needed to get me over the line to make it happen. But yeah, as soon as I finished shaving it, I texted her, I hate it. And she was like, oh, show me, trying to video call me. And I was just buttoning her, because I was just like, I was a mess. I'm not gonna lie, I was crying, and I was quite emotional. Within sort of 3-4 hours, looking back on it, I was almost over it, almost not straight away, but it was just, that's how I know that it was just shock. Yeah. But I think I think the reason I was so shocked is because, like I say, I've watched a lot of videos where it's like the reaction's been really positive, and then my reaction felt really negative, and then mentally I was kind of spiraling into something where I was like, oh no, like I'm that one guy that the bald head doesn't look good for. Do you know what I mean? I'm that one guy where not having hair looks stupid, and I was getting into this cycle, and then I was like, okay, well, it's gone, so I'm just going to crack on with my day. And I went onto a Teams call with my work, like a Zoom call with the guys I work with, and they were like, oh, have you done it? Show us. And I was just like, no, I'm not doing it. And eventually at the end of the call, they taught me into putting my camera on like this, and I did it, and they were all like, it's fine. What's the problem? Like, there was literally no reaction at all. And I was like, oh, okay. And then since then, everybody I've come across has kind of been the same reaction, where it's just like, it looks cool, like it's fine. Like, I haven't had anyone go, oh, it looks amazing, and I haven't had anyone say, oh, it looks terrible. I've had a few people say, why have you done it? But by and large, the reactions have been really positive, and every positive reaction sort of built into where I am now, where I'm just sort of feeling quite positive about it, feeling a lot more comfortable about it, and I'm getting to that point now where this is the preferred option.
So it's been 2 weeks since the head shave, and I can say that I'm feeling a lot better about myself.
So yeah, overall, mate, I'm feeling positive. So like I say, I went to the one initially, and then I got so comfortable yesterday that I just went off with the 0 as well. So that was like my first shave since the shave.
Right.
And I went with the 0 with no one on the blade as well, just to sort of feel it. And I think the reason I went down that route was because one thing I used to love about the barbers is that fresh feeling when you come out of the barbers and you've got like a fresh fade. I used to have like a fresh fade down the side with like a thicker bit at the top, a nice line, and then my hair would sort of brush over all the thin bits, right? But I used to love that fresh out the barber's feeling. Those few days where your hair's fresh were really the only days where I was super comfortable with my hair. So when I shaved it off with the one, I just thought it just doesn't feel clean. But at the same time, I was quite conscious about my head shape and like sort of getting used to it myself. So what I did was I just spent a few days just getting used to the head, getting used to bearing it all right. And then I thought, right, next time I go, I'm going for it. And then yesterday I went for it. And again, no eyelids were raised or batted really. So yeah, overall, mate, positive at the moment.
The thing that sticks out for me out of all of the way you describe it is probably the bit when you mentioned like the shock of it, the shock of it, because it's not something you've only been dealing with for a couple of weeks, right? This has been like something on your mind for a long time, and then to go through a massive 180 with it, with the whole thing, is huge. Like it's not to be disregarded, because you've been in like one sort of mindset on it for so long, and almost getting used to that, like sort of ingrained in you almost, and then bam, like you completely face it in a totally different way. Naturally, there's going to be that shock factor. So it's an important part, because it's great to G people up and show them like that there is a big relief that comes with it, but at the end of the day, it's real, for a lot of guys. And it's not always this like, oh yeah, I love it, this is amazing. It's something that you do have to get used to. So I'm always pleased to, like the channel, to keep it real and share the ins and the outs, right? When did you first notice that the hair was going, and when did it really ramp up to where it was like kind of affecting you?
The ramp up was quite rapid, but in terms of first noticing it, it's probably, I'm 30 now, and I'd probably say I first started noticing it when I was about 25. So I think like yourself, I thinned at the back first, and I've seen your video of, I remember the day you first saw it and you reacted on camera. I had a very similar reaction, but obviously not on camera, right? But I had this moment where I was messing around with the boys. This was even before I met my missus, actually. So this is probably even 7 years ago. So this might have been even when I was 23 almost. I was messing around with the boys, and we had like a pool in the back garden, summertime, barbecue out, having loads of fun, just being typical young lads. I've gone and done this like penguin type dive into the pool to try and make everyone laugh. And when you watch the video back, when I come up from the water, you can see the thin patch in my head. And I think if I go back, that's the first time it ever struck me in my head. But at the same time, I would say for a fair few years, I was sort of conscious of it but not bothered about it, because it was like not at that point where, for some, they see it and it's a realization that it's happening, and straight away it's like, I understand what that means. But for me, I just thought, well, it's cool, it's probably something else, and I kind of just never calculated it together. So moving through a few years then, I guess it really became a subject that I thought about a lot when I was playing my last year of playing rugby. It was a good level, and with a good level comes a lot of photography, right? So a lot of the games are photographed and videoed and all of the rest of it. And I remember the first pre-season game, it was so hot, we were just covering ourselves in water throughout the whole game. And when I look at all the photos back, every single one, there's this huge patch at the back of my head. And it was to the point where I would take the photo from the photographer and I edited them myself to put my hair back in, because I didn't want those photos ruined, because it was like, I'd worked hard to play at that level. And then to see the photos were like, to me, a special thing. Like to a lot of other players, the level I was playing at wasn't that high, but to me, it was important to me. So yeah, I edited these photos initially, and then it was like occasionally I'd get a bit of banter in the dressing room about it, you know, after the shower or whatever, like, oh, you're going thin at the back, or you're doing this. And to be honest, the rugby environment, it's like that. The banter is not malicious, and that it's not meant to be. It's just meant to be almost a gag to get the rest of the room laughing and joking, and there's a bit of camaraderie to it. And I absolutely took it as that at the time. But at the same time, it did plant a seed of like consciousness about that area of my head. Last year, I was seriously considering. So I came across the Baldcafe channel probably this time, sort of last year, and I'll be honest, I saw it. And I said, I'm not ready for that. Do you know what I mean? Like, I acknowledged it. I thought, right, okay, cool. But I wasn't ready. I was still in the hair fiber stage and the brown dry shampoo and like looking at all these other options stage. I probably had like a year of, like I say, the hair fibers. And I think the worst things are, I've got a daughter, and you capture a lot of photos at home. You're not in your, you know, you're dressed up to go out. You're not in your best form, if you like. You're casually sitting around in your trackies and you're just enjoying time with your kid. But I used to see a lot of things back where I could see that thinness coming in the back of my head, and it was getting quite significantly thinner. I'd say like the last year it's really ramped up in terms of my consciousness about it. And then I started thinking, okay, am I going to take this off or not? And at that point I started photoshopping my head bald and like using filters to like try and see what it looked like. And I would present those pictures to people to see what their reaction was like, almost like a subconscious exercise to try and
gauge people's reactions.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But I think the problem there was, because I wasn't talking about how it was affecting me, I was just sort of presenting it as an option. People were like, what's wrong with you? You've got loads of hair. Like, why would you do that? Like, that's a good joke or whatever, but why would you do that? And even my partner, she was like, you don't need to do it. You don't need to do that. Your hair's fine, blah, blah, blah. But I think what's important, and maybe something to highlight from that experience, is that if you don't tell people and talk to people about what's going on in your mind with this situation, people will sort of try and make you feel better about it naturally. So, for example, you know, for years, I spoke to my partner. I said, I'm losing my hair. At some point, I'm going to have to go bald. That day is today, right? When I was going to the barbers. And she'd be like, no, you don't need to. You don't. And she almost talked me out of it. But at the same time, I'd never had that conversation with her to say, listen, I'm struggling with this. You know, it makes me feel like crap. Like, I don't like the way it makes me feel. I don't like, you know, how I'm always conscious about it. I don't like going to the bathroom at work every half an hour to check that my hair's in order, or I don't like the long list, right? I've never expressed that. So they're not understanding in their head why you'd want to go from having hair to not having hair.
Yeah.
So obviously I was going through that stage where people were basically saying, no, you're fine, you know, keep your hair, you can hang on to it longer and all the rest of it. Somebody I work with, their boyfriend went through the shave due to Baldcafe. And I was talking about it at work. Basically, one of the blokes at work gave me a little bit of banter about my thinning hair. And I laughed it off. But then I think that it kind of just resurfaced all my worries. And I was speaking about it and I was saying, look, I'm thinking about, you know, going bald or whatever. And they were like, look, just do it. This was my colleague whose boyfriend went through the same thing and used Baldcafe to sort of go through it. Just do it. My boyfriend followed this channel, you know, Baldcafe, and it just clicked with me. And I was like, oh, I came across that channel before. At that point, I came back and I watched all the videos. Do you know what I mean? And then that was really when the option of shaving it off really became real. And that was only probably a month ago. So since then, the acceleration of me being obsessed with my head just increased really rapidly. I found I was taking photos way more often in my head, way more conscious. Like I say, I was going to the bathroom at work every half an hour just to try and like check and brush my hair over. And I think as well in this period of time, that's when I started to notice I was thinning at the front too. And it was almost like I could handle the thinning at the back because you don't have the constant reminder. But when it started coming through at the front and my entire style was based around a brush over this way, like, it kind of put me in a position where I felt backed against the wall, like I had no real options. I reached out to some of my friends that have been through it too. And they were just like, look, mate, your time's come, you know, your hairline's expired, all the rest of it. And then, yeah, like I said before, I just really quickly turned it around, made the decision and just did it before I had the chance to change my mind.
Talk to me a little bit, if you can, about you mentioned, like, obviously, you know, the fibers, right, and the few products, different products like that. So yeah, tell me about that side of your kind of journey. How has that been a thing for you? Yeah.
The hair fibers have been a thing probably about 3 years.
Okay.
But so at first it was like a thing where I'd only do it for sort of special occasions. Like I didn't really care about it unless I was going out or unless I was doing something, unless I was making like a real effort. I didn't care. I was, and then the hair fibers would go on. I also went for a stage of using dry shampoo that was coloured. So it's like brown dry shampoo. And that was like a less risky option really, because it doesn't blow out or anything like that. You can't like brush it out. And to be honest, I was never a master of the hair fibers either. It was just something I just sort of did. Obviously, I did explore some of the more permanent options. Personally, the drugs option would never be right for me, just because I have in the past struggled with like health anxiety and that sort of stuff. And I think that taking something would probably just trigger it. Like, I don't like to put anything, even paracetamol and stuff, like I'll only take it if it's absolutely necessary. I try not to, venture into that side of things too much. So looking at tablet options never appealed to me. And then obviously looking at the hair transplant option, my issue with that really was two things. First of all, is I've got a daughter, and if I spend $4,000 on that, that's $4,000 that I could have spent taking her to Disneyland or whatever. Do you know what I mean? It's priorities in life. Is your hair really worth that much to you? The answer was no. After finding your channel and learning a little bit more about those options as well, knowing that you'd have to go through the tablet and medication formats to keep and maintain that as well, just completely written it off as an option for me. It's important to say, if people feel like that's a good option for them, they should 100% do it. Just for me, where my priorities sat, if you look at photos of my dad, for example, and you look at his hairline, frigging non-existent in the middle, right, and non-existent at the back, and he just rocks it gracefully, right? And it's just like, it is what it is. And as long as I've ever known him, I remember him with that number one all over. No worries given, like, just didn't care. So that anxiety and everything that I took out of the acceleration of the process, it's a positive thing, I think, because it made me just make that decision and go, you know what? No, we're not living life like this. We're not doing this. I've got another baby due, like literally right now, that baby's due. Could be today, could be tomorrow, could be next week. I thought to myself, am I really just going to like get hung up on this when I've got so much else going on in my life? No. And once I shaved the hair off, I remember opening my drawer and I saw my wax and the hair fibers, and I just thought, don't need it. Do you know what I mean? Just threw it on the bed, and that alone was pretty freeing, and that was before any reaction from anybody. Just knowing that I used to have a habit of doing this all the time, brushing my hair over to the right to cover this bald patch here, and that's gone. The hair fibers and everything that were covering it before. What used to happen is I'd run my hand through my hair, I'd get hair fiber on my hand, and then it'd be on my forehead, and then I'd have to go and clean my forehead a little bit, and it's just like constant consciousness. So every option that you can think of that isn't just shaving it off has another consequence. And I think that's really why I never went down any route other than the hair fibers, is just because every action has an outcome, right? And at the end of the day, if the final outcome isn't hair from now to the day I die, what's the point? Do you know what I mean?
It's so true. It's really, really true.
One moment that sticks out, which is also probably relates to the timing of why I am where I am, is that when my first daughter was born, I remember being really conscious about the photos in the hospital, and we were in the hospital 3 or 4 days, and you can imagine, after 3 or 4 days of sleepless nights, trying to support my partner through labour and all the rest of it, you're a bit all over the shop, right? And it's okay to be all over the shop. You haven't done baby, for God's sake, right? But I remember my daughter Sienna being born, and I remember like having this really pure moment where I'm like holding her for the first time. The camera starts coming up, and it's just like, oh, let's capture this moment, let's get this, let's get that. And I just remember being really conscious about, and at the time, this was the front bit of my hair as well. So this bit here was one of my biggest consciousnesses, because sort of that was the way my hair was brushed over. I just remember feeling really conscious about it. And one of the first photos I had with her, I'm sat on a chair and I've got her in my arms and I'm looking down at her and the camera's above me. And all I could think about was, there's going to be a bald patch on that photo. And there was, and I edited it. And the original one doesn't exist. The original one doesn't exist. Only the edited one exists. So the first ever photo of me with my daughter is edited. And it's only a minor alteration, right? But at the same time, it just shows you how some of the most wholesome and like beautiful moments in your life can be affected by something that you've built up in your head to be something that it really isn't. Going back to why I am where I am now, with having another baby due, I'm kind of relieved that my hair's gone. I ain't got to worry about it, and the moment's going to be mine this time. You know, my hair won't steal that moment from me, or my consciousness of my hair won't steal that moment for me. So I think out of anything that maybe stands out in terms of that editing the photo side of things, it's probably that. And you know, that's something I haven't really told anyone either. Like, it was just something that I subconsciously did off my own back. Like, I've got an app on my phone called Airbrush, and there's an acne tool on it, and the acne tool just copy and paste the closest bit of skin or color that's there. So if you apply it to your hair, it just moves the brown parts of your hair to the bold bits of your hair. It's super simple to use, and it just shows you how easy it is to manipulate your photos and be something you're not. And I think that's also part of it, is that how long do you want to pretend that you're something you're not, or that you look away that you don't? Because the truth is that builds its own insecurity. You go out in public and you think, actually, if people see me on Instagram and then they see me here, I look nothing like this. They're gonna think, how come on Instagram he's got a perfect head of hair, but here he looks like a monk? Do you know what I mean? You know, that was another motivational thing for me, that it was just like, stop editing and pretending that you're somebody you're not, and just get rid of it and stop worrying about it. If I have a child, no one's thinking about my hair. They're thinking about the fact I've just had a child. And I think that's where the power of the mind is really displayed, because it's like, it just shows you how easily this can get out of control in your head and make you feel like it's something way more than it is, and ruin moments in your life that should just be so organic and real.
It just goes to show just how much of an impact, like a negative impact, the insecurity over things like losing your hair can be. How you said how it can build and kind of get, you know, let's be real, get out of control, you know, and to continue down a path like that is you know, a shame, right? If it was to go on and on and on like that, mate. Yeah, no, I can't agree more. Are you happy to, you know, because how happy are you to share it, all of it, or do you want me to kind of take the realist parts out, or, you know, because
you share what the thing with me, mate, is I'm cool with you know, whatever
emotions.
Like the thing is, I think that, like, over the years, as I've got a bit older, I've tried to learn a little bit more about the emotional side of myself, because very much, and you know, coming from a rugby background, like being a rugby player, that culture is like, shut up and put up. That's the culture. And you know, don't get me wrong, over the years there's been a lot of work to try and maneuver that around, but I've been playing rugby, or was playing rugby, from the age of 9 or 10 all the way through to when I was 28, 29. Playing for all those years and being part of that culture for all those years, you do sort of learn to clam up about things that you're sensitive about, because the truth is, if you show your insecurity towards something, you will receive banter about it. That's the way it is. And I'll be honest as well, I've given out banter about people with hair loss.
Yeah.
Right? I've done that. I've been that guy. And you know, and a good example of that is my best mate Steve. He's younger than me, and he was receding early, and I used to give him crap about it all the time. And when he shaved it off, I gave him crap about it, right? And I look back, and I've even said, mate, I was wrong to do that. Do you know what I mean? And you only learn that you're wrong to do that when you go through it yourself. So yeah, I mean, in terms of this, I'm here to keep it real. You know, I want if I'm going to share it and I'm going to talk about it, then I want it to have the impact on somebody that the videos that I've watched have had on me. And I want someone to sort of see this and go, you know what, he struggled with it and he didn't like it either. When he did it, he didn't like it. And literally 5 days later, it's like I feel like completely different mindset on it. You know, when I shaved the head, you've seen, I cried. Do you know what I mean? I couldn't even barely speak because I was just in so much shock and upset. And if there's one thing, hopefully people can take from seeing what I do share, I'd like it to be that, you know, sometimes change happens, and sometimes initially you don't like the change, but eventually your mind's a powerful thing, and you're, you know, more powerful and have got a lot more strength and mental resilience than you think, and you can just come out of that situation a lot better off. To be honest, I'm already starting to get to that stage now where I look in the mirror and I don't remember myself with hair. It's only been 5 days, right? And other people are already like, yeah, well, I'm used to it now. The reactions were so genuine and kind of blasé almost. Like the guys I work with, etc., they were just like, yeah, looks cool, man. Obviously, the one thing I would say is I kind of set that accountability for myself before I did it.
You did,
So,
yeah. That was important.
Yeah, which I think
big.
helped.
That's big. That is big.
Yeah, because if you commit to something, I am one of these people where if I commit to something, I'm committed to it, and that is it. You know, if I say I'm doing something, I'm doing it. A couple of weeks before I shaved my head, I put a poll on my Instagram, like showing photos of my thinning hair, like fully exposing the way I felt about it for the first time, and just said, look, this is thinning. Do you think I should go bald, or do you think I can hang on a little bit longer? And I put like a bit of a funny slant on it to try and get a bit of reaction. And the vote was exactly 50-50, and like 40 something people voted on it. It was exactly 50-50. 50% people saying go bald, 50% of people saying hang on to your hair as long as you can, right? That doesn't help me at all. That's exactly how I feel, right? And then in the end, you know, after we had our conversations about it, and I spoke to my friend Steve, who's the guy I gave shit about being bald originally, and he was like, look, mate, it's going to look sound, you know, and he was supportive, you know, and I spoke to the people I work with and all the rest of it about it. And I think the key conversation was the one with my partner, because going back to the context earlier, you know, I'd spoken to her about it in the past, and she said, oh no, don't do it, you'll look like your dad, all this other stuff. And I think she was scared that what she would see would be so different that she would not get used to it. But once I had that conversation with her about how I was actually feeling about it, and I said, look, like, you don't realize how much this has affected me. Like when I'm at work, I sit right under a light that shines on the back of my head like a spotlight. And as soon as somebody comes up to me for like some support or some help, or they've got a question for me, or they're coming to get me to go to a meeting or whatever it is, the first thing I think about is that. And when I told her that story, she was like, if shaving it off will get rid of that, do it. And as soon as she said that, that was like the seal of approval for me to just go and do it. So yeah, I think the key things need to be that the conversation needs to happen. You need to talk to people about it. You need to open up about it and be honest about it, and be honest with yourself about what it means. And then accept the fact that you might shave it off and love it straight away, but you might also shave it off and hate it. But that doesn't mean that you'll always hate it. It's just about coming to terms with that that's what it is now. I think that's probably one of the biggest things I've learned out of it anyway.
Is there anything you kind of want to finish on, a message that you want to kind of share to anyone who might watch this video that we haven't touched on?
The only thing I'd say is, you know, trust your gut. You know, if you don't feel like you're ready to do it, then maybe it's not your time to do it. You know, I felt like it is my time, but my head was telling me no, but my gut was telling me yes, right? And that's why when the shaver landed in my house, it just happened straight away, because I followed my gut. And I feel like if you're feeling deep down that you're really not going to cope with it, then maybe just wait. There's nothing wrong with waiting. You've held on this long, you know, you can wait, but at the same time, understand that if you do take the leap, it could change for you like that. 2-3 weeks will go by and you'll be used to it, and that'll be it. It'll be over. The anxiety, the worry, the, you know, photoshopping photos, the worry about ruining organic moments, all of that stuff, it's over.